And some people say, how can you say everyone? Well, there's something called the biology. Because guys have a pointer and women don't.
It's real basic.
So couples that make it in their marriage seem to have one thing really figured out, and that's how to get through a fight. So you guys are experts. What's your best advice for navigating arguments in a marriage?
Fighting is obviously unavoidable, and many couples come in because of that. There is incessant fighting, arguing, bickering, and you could probably say we are somewhere on the continuum. Either people are too close together and fighting and are hot, or they're going to be too distant. They have parallel lives and they never meet, and there's no conflict. So when we fight, what we're looking at is that it's better to have a hot fight, a fight where there are emotions involved. It's much better than have an alligator fight that's cold and dismissive and punitive. Oh. And then when we're in a fight, in a session, we invite people to fight. We want to see them at their worst. I often say, have a fight in here and not when you drive away in the car. So when they have a fight, then we can interfere with the two nervous systems they're involved in. And often what you see in a fight, people are obviously very aroused. They are not functioning very well. They cannot really do complex data. They cannot do relationships because they're somehow stuck in their alert and alarm system, which is the limbic system. And that's a system that goes very fast in milliseconds, but it doesn't do complexity very well. So they're often involved in these fight-flight, stilling, freezing positions, and they cannot move forward. So what we try to do is that people fight, and then we're trying to move them in a different position, in a different brain system, so they can actually do some linking and some brain restructuring and making more connections between these two major systems that we have in the brain. And that will actually change things dramatically, because often things go wrong because of nonverbal cues, the tone of voice, you starting already and I already see what's coming, I don't want to hear it, and so people upset each other right away. And so we're trying to move them in a different nervous system, and so there's real learning happening.
I often like to say, when it comes to a fight, it really does beg the need to understand just how the brain is functioning and all these hormones that are firing and the nerves firing and so forth. Because when we're hot, we're up there, and sometimes people get there in different paces too.
Yeah.
And so it's really learning to understand, what's the trigger here, what needs are not being met. But it's almost learning to disengage than to re-engage. Because if you go there in the heat of the moment, it's probably just going to get hotter and escalate even more.
And a lot of times it helps if you understand where a person's basic nature is. And so do you have someone who is emotional that really needs to be heard, and it's not about making sense out of the relationship or solving the problem? And then you've got others that are more interested in solving the problem rather than just expressing the emotion. And so one of the areas that I found that's good in understanding your partner is by understanding your dominant gland or your body type, because this really tells you where your strengths lie, and it also shows you how to relate to that other person, because you understand who that person really is, what their needs are.
I think that's so important, is that we recognize that everybody is unique and different. Mm-hmm. And of course, in my work with Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, there are certain similarities that all women have that are very different from all men. And some people say, how can you say everyone? Well, there's something called the biology. Because guys have a pointer and women don't.
It's real basic.
And it's very basic. It's involved with everything in the brain. It's involved with our hormones. And you can simplify it. It's complex, but you can simplify it with women have and need at least 10 times more estrogen in their body, and men need at least 10 times more testosterone than a woman. And when those hormones go out of balance within ourselves, we see the symptom of that is going to be very high stress, which is fighting. So my approach towards fighting is really recognize what's going on, gives us a little more distance to it, is when I'm angry as a man, clearly that means my estrogen levels are rising and my testosterone's going down. And very few people knew that before, but it was recent research showing that when men are angry, their estrogen is going up, flooding the limbic system. They can't think clearly, and whatever they say is going to make it worse. So I tell men, if you're angry, notice it, take a time out. And not to suppress the emotion, because it's emotion that keeps passion alive. We have to stay in touch with emotion. So when I get defensive, and I explain to people, whether a man or a woman, when you're in fight or flight and you're defensive, you can't hear another point of view. It takes blood flow to the prefrontal cortex to actually have a constructive hearing another point of view. With women, they have a much greater need to express emotion when they're stressed. Men have just the same need to feel it, but to contain it and transform it, process it in many different ways, but not throwing it on his partner. For women, it's very important to express that emotion, because when you express emotion, estrogen levels go up, women's stress levels go down. And this is a very biological, fundamental thing inside of women. They need to talk when they're stressed. The key is, don't talk to him when he's defensive. So it's just, you can have your own code phrase, but in my marriage that works so well, we don't fight anymore.
So if you're in a relationship and you guys are fighting and in a war, first understand it's normal. Everybody fights. There's no one on the planet that gets through it without disagreements. But if you are struggling to figure out how to do it safely and feeling like you're getting your needs met, contact one of these guys. They've got a lot of advice to help you with. You don't have to do it by yourself.